Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by, as always. I'm grateful. I'm looking forward to hosting Stephen Jennings on the 9th of June at the Sankara. And he's, of course, got a very big story to tell, and I think he's going to tell it. I'd like to thank His Excellency Johan Borgstam for the invitation yesterday to an early celebration of the Swedish National Day. He said many things. The one that caught my attention was he said, Sweden is pursuing a feminist foreign policy. And I'll put up another photograph of the party. It was rather grand. All the palm trees were lit up, and most enjoyable it was too. And it was also a pleasure to meet Jeffrey York, the Africa correspondent of the Globe and Mail, and Eric Conway-Smith of Global Post this morning at the Norfolk, and had a very nice breakfast, for which I'm grateful. Macro thoughts. It's just unbelievable what's going on, the volatility, the types of moves we're seeing. And it took me back to that piece I wrote on the 29th of September when I said it's a small window for sharks and that there will be blood in the water. And on that note, I'll put up the photograph of the shark at the Dubai Mall. Zero hedge, volatility explodes, China, bunds crash, then smash, Dow, S&P 500 tumble below key support levels. Big day in the market yesterday. Could get even bigger today, given that we've got the non-farm payrolls number out. Draghi warned traders 2 days ago that markets must get used to periods of higher volatility, and he was not kidding. 10-year German paper briefly touched 0.99% before quickly finding buyers ahead of what seemed like an inevitable stop flush. The question was the German bond market leading the euro or vice versa. The euro-dollar had jumped in early trading, pushing the pair up an unprecedented 400 pips in the past 3 days alone. And rarely have we seen these violent, dramatic moves in the markets. Talking about the 10-year bund pulling along the US 10-year Treasury with it. So lots of volatility in the markets, and China as well, up and down like anything. The Fed was urged by the IMF to postpone the rate lift-off to the first half of 2016. Madame Lagarde has been a siren in this matter. Lender also said that the dollar was moderately overvalued. Further market depreciation would be harmful in a statement released in Washington on Thursday on its annual checkup of the US economy. The FOMC should remain data dependent and defer its first increase in policy rates until there are greater signs of wage or price inflation than are currently evident. A stronger dollar, declining oil investment in the West Coast port strike in the first quarter will pull down US growth to 2.5% this year, said the fund, which previously projected the world's largest economy to expand by 3.1% in 2015. The Federal Reserve Chair, Janet Yellen, on May 22nd said she still expects to increase interest rates this year if the economy meets her forecasts. Fed hasn't raised rates since 2006. Will need to see continued improvement in labor market conditions and be reasonably confident that inflation will move back to 2%. I expect the Fed to move in September. Home thoughts take me back to V.S. Naipaul, great writer, interesting character as well. My favourite is from actually a book called Miguel Street. Look, boys, it ever strike you that the world, not real at all, it ever strike you that we have the only mind in the world and you just thinking up everything else? Like me here, having the only mind in the world and thinking up you people here. Thinking up the war and all the houses and the ships and them in the harbour. That ever crossed your mind? It certainly crossed mine many times. And I used to wonder whether, my real life was a dream and my dream was the real life. Another quote from a fantastic book, A Bend in the River. If you haven't read it, do read it. It's about this family running a shop or something right off the Congo River. It isn't that there's no right and wrong here. There's no right. And then life is a hell of a thing. You can see trouble coming and you can't do a damn thing to prevent it coming. You just got to sit and watch and wait. I like this photograph from the old Pics archive on Twitter. Jimi Hendrix, Carnaby Street, June 1967. Take a look at that. Political reflections. Petraeus, US needs to re-evaluate its ISIS strategy. The US-led coalition is keeping up air attacks on ISIS targets in Iraq and Syria, yet the Islamic terror group still controls important territory and cities, including Palmyra in Syria and both Mosul and Ramadi in Iraq. Former CIA director, retired General David Petraeus, who has commanded US forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, spoke with Charlie Rose on the CBS Evening News about the challenges the coalition faces in the fight against ISIS. The situation on the ground in Iraq and Syria is worrisome, Petraeus said, calling the loss of Ramadi to ISIS both an operational and a strategic setback, a significant one. This is the moment, I think, when you sit back and say, what do we need to do in the military arena? What also do we need to do in the political arena? ISIS is clearly a threat to the United States, to our allies and partners around the world, and of course very much in the region, where it's fomenting instability, violence and so forth, and indeed far beyond Iraq and Syria, Petraeus said. It's also into North Africa. It's even trying to recruit in Afghanistan and Pakistan. I don't know whether you need a whole new strategy. What you need is look at what you have, figure out what you need to augment. And he's saying that allowing the participation of Iraqi Shiite militias with ties to Iran would be the very last resort. I conclude by saying ISIS are all in. The US and some of its Gulf allies are very circumspect about this fight because ISIS is also a dagger pointed at Tehran's heart. Interesting report came out of RT News, which tends to be poo-pooed all the time. Russian investigators reveal the identity of a key witness in the MH17 crash. The Russian Investigative Committee has identified a key witness to the MH17 crash in Ukraine's Donetsk region. He's Evgeny Agapov, an aviation armaments mechanic in the Ukrainian Air Force. The man is currently under Russian state protection. And well, let's see what comes out of that, because it's a very murky tale, isn't it? And I wrote about MH370. I said, His Excellency Johan Borgstam, with whom I was celebrating an early celebration of the Swedish National Day, told me the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of MH370. Picking up the signal through the noise of our world in 2014 is no easy thing. In fact, my view is the new normal is a very arrhythmic world. When I plugged arrhythmia into my computer, it threw up this. For years, it had been studying the phenomenon of chaos, of which an arrhythmic heartbeat was a perfect example. And I was saying, that this was signaled by that disappearance, a failure to explain what exactly happened. Since then, planes have been falling out of the sky like flies. And the uncertainty around MH370 and MH17 is sharpened by the way the story is seemingly turned on and off. And it took me back to Don DeLillo. We are witnessing the flow of information, so much as pure spectacle, or information made sacred, ritually unreadable. The small monitors of the office, home and car become a kind of idolatry here, where crowds might gather in astonishment. Sepp Blatter tweeted, working hard on reforms after meeting Audit and Compliance Committee. Chairman Sculler. Amnesty now, it's good to get the wider picture. This is what Tank Man stood in front of in Tiananmen. Of course, that's a very iconic photograph. International markets, obviously, it's all about the non-farm payrolls, which are expected in less than an hour, or just over an hour. 225,000 jobs are expected to have been created, and anything above 250 is going to send the dollar soaring. Euro all over the place, tracking Bund yields right now as we speak. 112.42 dollar index, not sure because I haven't got that on my screen. Japanese yen 124.81, inexorable rise to 125 and then 125.70. Swissy 0.9335. Pound 153.08. Aussie 0.7697. India rupee 64 change. South Korean won 11.35 last time I looked. Rial 314.21. Egyptian pound 763.19. And the South African rand 1242.42. Dollar index, I'll put up a 1 month chart. 100, just above hundreds of key level for the dollar bulls. We need to get back up there. Today might be the start of it, or we might have a retracement. Let's see how it pans out. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 3 month chart. Have a look at that. Been all over the place. In the latest Greek twist, Athens delayed a debt payment to the IMF and instead chose to bundle 4 payments into a single 1.6 billion euro lump sum, which is now due on June the 30th. Alexis Tsipras tweeted, "The government will not accept extreme proposals. Our people have suffered enough during the past 5 years." And put up quite a sad photograph of himself, I thought. Jamie McGeever of Reuters' latest Greek unemployment figures just announced 25.6%. You can imagine that's a crashing blow. Dollar yen now 124.80. And it's been on a relentless sell-off. Dollar's been on a relentless march higher of late. RAN Squawk breaking. Shanghai Composite rises above 5,000 for the first time since 2008. They've stoked up a big old rally over there. Hunsader tweeted close-up of China's near 5% swoon and then recovery. This was from yesterday. China's 8% price swing this morning, red versus other world index futures, and you can see that it was a wild move over there. Coming to the commodity markets, the big event obviously is the OPEC meeting in Vienna. I can't see them changing because, as I said previously, if you're rubbing people's noses into the dirt, which is what the strategy is here, you don't suddenly take your foot off their faces until you know you've won. OPEC will be meeting on Friday. I expect no change. Holger Scheipitz has tweeted oil prices ahead of the OPEC meeting. They've come down a very, very long way, as you can see from this image he put up. Crude oil was around the $58 level. I think it's a massive sell down to 50. Gold, last trading 1175.37. I think we're going to break down below 1,000 in my view. Frontier markets, let's go there. Soon, this is how you'll get to Cuba. This is an article in Bloomberg about Cuba. Beautiful photograph of the beach as well, and I'll put that up as well, saying American tourists are coming for airlines and ferry services. It will be the 1950s all over again. I like this photo of the Varadero Beach, Cuba. Just imagine all the sunburned American tourists. Photographer is Walter Bibica of Getty Images. Sub-Saharan Africa, Rwandan opposition party seeks to block president term extension. This is President Kagame. The Democratic Green Party of Rwanda demands the Supreme Court to order the Rwandan parliament not to change Article 101 of the Constitution, the party said in a statement, saying the party filed its lawsuit on Wednesday. I concluded by saying, you know, Kigali is not Bujumbura. President Kagame is surely set to win a third term. However, when I was at the cocktail party last night at the Swedish ambassadors, talking to a very learned African gentleman, he said, well, Bujumbura, he said, Nkurunziza would win the election. And hands down, he's extremely popular over there. And that this was largely manufactured, was his view. World Economic Forum's taking place in South Africa. I'll put up a photograph that the World Economic Forum tweeted. Angola is set to plan a $25 billion borrowing to fund its budget gap this year. Country central bank seeking to raise $15 billion selling treasury bills and bonds with a balance funded by foreign debt. Africa's second largest oil producer, struggling to cope with crude prices that have slid more than 40% over the past year. The government in February cut its 2015 budget by 26% to 5.4 trillion kwanza, $49 billion. Stalling efforts to complete a new airport, refinery and transit system while predicting the fiscal gap will reach 7% of GDP. Most of the foreign debt will be credit lines from countries such as China and Brazil. Functioning public transport system and capacity to produce refined product are essential to keep down costs, which in other countries have sparked protests. They're strategic priorities for the government. World Bank estimates Angola's GDP at about $124 billion compared with $366 billion for South Africa, $522 billion for Nigeria. Government said it's negotiating $500 million of loans, each from SocGen, the World Bank, $250 from Goldman Sachs in separate deals. Government's annual debt plan shows that 24% of external borrowing will mature this year, with May marking Angola's highest repayment at 89 billion kwanza. Angola's net foreign reserves fell to $26.2 billion in February from $27.5 billion in December. Kwanza unchanged at 110.30. The currency, which has lost 6.7% this year, reached a record low of 110.9068, but it's very difficult currently to change money if you wished. You're being heavily restricted by the government. I like this photograph that Times Live tweeted. Zuma leads high-powered delegation to the World Economic Forum. South African all-share up 3.12% so far this year, has corrected 7.003% since setting a record high on the 24th of April this year. Transnet has agreed to borrow $2.5 billion from China Development Bank. Transnet SOC, South Africa's state-owned ports and rail operator, agreed to a $2.5 billion loan from China Development Corps to build locomotives in Africa's most industrialized economy. Loan will be payable over 15 years with the first tranche of 18 billion rand, $1.5 billion to be drawn over the first 4 years. Dollar rand, we're now at 12.4201, and I think we're going to test the top of the range, which is around 12.65. Egyptian pound 7.63, but it's a managed currency. Egyptian stock market EGX 30 is down 1.635% so far this year. The Nigerian all-share is down 3.4076% so far this year. The cedi weakened to a record on Thursday, extending its 23% drop against the dollar this year, the most among 24 African currencies tracked by Bloomberg. Can you imagine that? There was an explosion at a gasoline station in Accra, killed at least 96 people. Mahama pledged to take measures to avoid a repeat of the tragedy. And what the story is, they lack the fiscal space completely to deal with the current situation. It's unfortunate as they lack the fiscal space to deal with the situation themselves, said Yvonne Mango, an economist at Renaissance Capital, who predicts the cedi will weaken to 4.72 versus the dollar by the end of the year. They're going to have to look at what funds they can draw from the existing program to address the situation, or ask the development partners to assist them. You're probably going to see some external assistance. They need it. They need it now. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 4.64% this year, doing all right. And according to Martina Stevis, who writes for the Wall Street Journal, MasterCard issues first cards in Somalia, taps $1.6 billion of remittances. Government loves it. Coming to Kenya, let's take a look. Small-scale farmers. This was an interesting story, which doesn't really sync with some of the other stuff I've been hearing. Small-scale flower farmers who grow open-air varieties have recorded revenue increase of up to 500% in the past month. That's good news. Most popular variety, known as Arabicum, which sells at between 4 shillings and 6 shillings per stem, is currently selling at between 13 and 15 shillings a stem. The prices are abnormally high, yet we are in the off-season. We have never experienced this. According to Wilfred Muriri, who owns Wilma Flowers, a flower exporting company, the strong dollar is one of the reasons for the high prices. I'm not sure that makes sense. I put up a photograph of Kenyan roses that I liked. Uber Kenya to begin taking cash mobile money payments. This is a report on Business Daily. It's on Rich Wrap-Ups as well, if you care to take a look. Kenya shilling has been remarkably firm of late, last trading at 96.341. Nairobi all share up 0.8165% so far in 2015. it's sort of steadied. There's good demand for big cap stocks. The NSE 20 is a totally different story. That's down 6.627% in 2015 and closed at 17th of June 2014 lows yesterday. And it's just had one little turnaround there. Was unable to make much more progress than that. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by. I appreciate it. Wish you a great weekend and hope to see you at Mindspeak.